Good to be with you again. I hope you are all well. August the 4th is the feast day of St. John Vianney, the patron saint of all priests. And I thought I'd like to share a little bit with you about that great saint. He was born in 1786, just 3 years before the French Revolution began. So he grew up in a very turbulent time. He was from a peasant family in southeastern France. And we know that at times the revolutionary spirit turned against the church. So the priests were hunted down, and if they were found, they would be beheaded on the guillotine. So we know that St. John Vianney made his first Holy Communion at a little secret mass held in his family home with a priest who was passed from Catholic family to practicing Catholic family. As he grew up, at times the revolutionary government shut down all the schools in France because they were afraid teachers would be teaching their students about the kings and the nobility and trying to restore all that. And John was not a very bright student, to be frank. In time, when he grew up, he was drafted into the armies of Napoleon, who would become the dictator of France. John obviously felt very uncomfortable with the thought of shooting people, and so somehow he managed to escape from the army and hid in the mountains of southern France for a number of years. Somehow, I guess, working odd jobs to earn a little bit to have food and stay somewhere. When Napoleon was finished and done with, people were able to come out of their hiding places again. We're told that when the church was able to resume functioning, there were so many people needing to be confirmed that John and many hundreds of others lined up in the town square with the bishop giving confirmation to all of them. John felt a desire to become a priest. He went to the seminary, and the authorities recognized he was obviously a very holy young man, but he just wasn't too bright. He especially had difficulties trying to understand things in lectures spoken in Latin about theology. They were also afraid that if they ordained him in that age of the Enlightenment, that John might actually be an embarrassment to the church. But they finally decided to ordain him a priest, and they would send him to some small little village somewhere where he couldn't possibly do too much damage to the church. It wouldn't be embarrassing. So they sent him to a little town of Ars, A-R-S, in eastern France, between the great city of Lyon and the border with Switzerland. In that little town, most people had become very indifferent to God and religion. So John began his work quietly with a lot of prayer for those people and penance, extreme fasting. And gradually, bit by bit, he touched the minds and hearts of many of the people so that they came back to church. He even had to enlarge the small little church there, build an addition to accommodate all the people. And he was teaching the children the catechism. And he noticed that there were a number of young ladies who were without families. So many had been killed in the persecution of the church in the Reign of Terror, and also many lost their parents during the days of Napoleon and many of the soldiers who were killed. So he established a home, La Providence, for these young ladies. But he especially became known as a confessor. And soon people were spreading the word from one town to another, and soon people were coming from all over France, even all over Europe, to come to John Vianney to make their confession. At times, we're told the government in Paris was wondering, why are we having to provide all these trains to take people down to this little town of ours? What's going on down there? Are they plotting to bring back the king and have a revolution? No, it's just people are going there to make confession to this holy priest. We're told that people would come by train, get off the train there in the village and get a number and wait. And sometimes they'd wait a whole week in order to make their confession to St. John Vianney. His goodness, his mercy, his love touched so many. In fact, we are told that he used to spend about 11 or 12 hours a day in the confessional during the winter. But in the summertime, it went up to about 16 hours of confessions every day. He'd go in the confessional, then take a little break for lunch, go back in the confessional, take some supper, go back in the confessional until it was time for prayers and a little sleep at night. He died in 1859, and the word of his holiness had spread so that in a very short time he was canonized a priest and indeed recognized as the patron saint of all parish priests. I had the privilege of visiting that little town twice. I had a map that showed all the religious sites and pilgrimage sites in France, and there was no R's on it. It wasn't even mentioned. But we found the town, and I suspect it was very much like in the days of John, a very small agricultural town. I was driving around in a car we rented, and Mom accompanied me. So I know we stayed at a little hotel there in the town, the only hotel, very much an old French place. We would have to go down the hallway to use the toilet facilities or to take a shower. And the church was very simple, as it had been in John's day. I was able to celebrate Mass on both of those occasions. And at the altar where St. John's body is lying in state in a glass and gold coffin above the altar. And the second time I was there, the seminarian who was acting as the sacristan told me in French before I went to the altar that I have given you to celebrate Mass the very chalice St. John Vianney used himself when he celebrated Mass. Wow, that was one of my greatest moments, obviously. So we'd like to show you some photos that I took at that time. I hope that you'll be able to see something of the simplicity of that village where St. John Vianney ministered. And certainly I hope that you will pray for all priests. Pope Benedict XVI made John Vianney the patron saint of all priests. Pray that we may learn from him the importance of prayer and penance in our lives as we seek to bring Christ to others. And pray that more will receive the call and answer the call of Jesus to serve his people as priests and religious.